Hi guys, I am back with part two. I wanted to continue with the conversation about karma and being mindful with taking on other people's responsibilities, taking on their karma, taking on their problems and their issues, and finding remedies for everything. Now, if you're getting paid to do something that is outside of you, by all means, but also I would say use your judgment. You don't have to take on everybody. I think that it is perfectly fine to decline energy because you have to put yourself first. Remember, you belong to you before anybody else. So going from there, past life, taking that moment to reflect on where you came, the energy that you came out of, the karma that you came out of. All of our shit has stuck at one point, where we're going through the death, life cycles. We're going through karma. We're going through the dark night of the soul. We're going through all of these different things. And now that you have, withered your own emotional storm and you've gone through, all the things, even taking moments of retreat and being silent, your own energy. Sometimes, you sit within yourself, you sit within your household, whatever the case may be, and you're just reflecting and looking at all different perspectives, and it's a growing process. You're learning. We can't say that we all have the answers at all times, and we've never hurt or harmed anyone. People mirror us, and we may not understand then, but later on, when we've given ourselves that second chance, there's nothing wrong with it. Especially we're meant to grow. So that being that, once you've come out of your own karma, you've done your own work and dealing with family, relationships, business, where you've come out of things, whether you felt like, you were wronged or you were doing the wrong, and you've sat with that, you made peace with that, you've humbled yourself, your ego, all the things. You don't want to bring back that life into this new life. We've passed that. You don't want anyone to harness off that energy also, where it's kind of like, okay, well, you've done the work, and since they have placed you at this like high priestess energy, well, here, do this work for me. They have like this sense of entitlement where you can survive their storm. And how dare you put boundaries? How dare you say no? They want you to feel hopeless. They want you, and then also be mindful of the people who put their energy on you, and it's not yours, and you're wondering, where's this energy coming from? And you start to feel depressed. You start to feel hopeless. They're always sending negativity on you. They're always trauma dumping on you. Be very, very careful of that. The people that come back into your life, the people who enter into your life at the same time, where, they want to be friends and it's all good and dandy at first, but then suddenly they slowly start to dump on you. And you got to put those boundaries up where it's kind of like, okay, well, listen, this is the line that will not be crossed. If they want to try to gaslight you, there's the door. We're not doing that. You've fought your battles. Let them fight theirs. We're not taking other people's karma. We're not giving them their remedy. Now, if you want to be a friend and kind and point them in the right direction, but you trying to do step by step by step and hoping that, if you give them these tools and suddenly everything will be well, if they are known for repeating the same pattern over and over and over and over. Isn't that insanity? Doing the same thing and hoping for a different, result. Like, yes, some people argue, which I won't, where there's a gray line where you're hoping for a change. If you, do the same thing and just maybe this time, things might work out. And, no comment, we've all been there, but like literally, just doing the same thing and knowing that you can rely on somebody else for them to do the work. They're going to treat you like an energetic bank, So just be mindful of that. Have your own foundation. Also, hitting on that, Have your own foundation, build your own foundation. Pay attention to the structure that you have already built. Take appraisal of the structure that you have. What tools you're using, what tools you may need, your home, yourself, your body, your health, your finances, building your entrepreneurship, whatever the case may be. Establish your own security first before you start going out trying to play Captain Save-A-Ho. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be tied up and bound, you don't want to be trapped, stuck. You're, first of all, being captive in somebody else's energy, you end up, you know how they say destiny swapping, energy swapping, suddenly you're in their energy and you're stuck. You're trapped because you didn't finish doing what you were doing. You weren't finished building up your foundation. And now, you've given that energy away, whether, on purpose because you're trying to be kind or by accident. And now you turn around, you realize in the blink of an eye, they're doing better. And suddenly you're going through these milestones, and once again, that brings you back to getting through that karma. And sometimes, I feel like there's a spectrum of that. Like we all think of like love and karma and like getting out the dark night of the soul, but also patterns, cycles, how many times you want to go through that karma before you release that. Another card I want to touch base on, intimacy, bonding with yourself, and also like I feel a high like energy and passion coming from bonding with that one person. Maybe you haven't hung out with them in a while, and rightly so, because you're catering to yourself. And, this energy I'm picking up, they are matching your energy. I'm not going to say in twin flame, but they are on the same energy and wave as far as, micromanaging themselves versus micromanaging others. They're in their space of comfort. They're in their space of sensuality. They're in their space of building their home. They're, and you mix well together. And I feel like creating those two energies without being vampiric and parasitic creates a beautiful garden, keeping those bonds alive. And also with yourself, take that time, have that sensual bath, burn those candles, speak affirmations to yourself. Listen, as they say, fake it till you make it. If you're not feeling that way, at least say something, at least one kind thing to yourself in the morning when you wake up. Write it, on your ceiling, the first thing you see when you look up, or on the side on your wall, on your mirror, whatever the case may be. That is very important, keeping that consistency with yourself, because if you can't, let me shuffle that in. If you can't keep that consistency with yourself, how are you supposed to with others? And how are others going to take you seriously? So your first allegiance is to yourself. Yes, we say our ancestors and, whatever your Godhead is, and that's pretty much a given, but on this plane, you belong to you before anybody else. You have to get your foundation straight. You have to make sure that you're mentally well, that you're holistically doing well, your finances are in order, even if it's not perfect, that you have some form of cornerstone and stability for yourself. And I also want to say, take time to take yourself out on a date, treat yourself, even if you don't have the funds, even if you don't have the funds, or maybe you're not making as much funds as before financially, even if it's, finding a deal, taking yourself out to the movie, going to the park while sipping tea, or, having that intimate time with a friend, however you want to call it, for creating space with yourself, I think is very important, at least once a week at minimum. Even if you want to take a bath, sit in silence, which I think is a beautiful thing. Sit in silence, do a little breath work, a little yoga, meditation. Okay, let's see what else. This is not going to be a long read. I just want to come up in here and do a part 2 to the first one. Anything else to share with the collective? Let's see. Mountain. Yes, nature, elevation, perspective. Just like the hermit that goes into their space, the seeker, solitude. And also, not just, as they say, not everybody that wanders are lost. Sometimes you have to go uphill. Sometimes you have to go into a new space. Sometimes you have to go into a new realm, a new dimension. Sometimes you have to carve out that path for yourself where you go, where, it's least traveled, and you explore. You sit in silence. If it takes you going into the woods, going into nature, going camping, to find that peace and just like breathe in the prana, breathe in the simplicity of what's around you. Because I personally find that the more I sit in silence, the more that I sit with myself and I just be and observe what's around me, it does something to your body, to your mind, to your spirit. Of course your mind wanders, and I feel like it's a healthy practice to let it wander without judgment. Take a notebook with you, write it down, go to the park, wherever the case may be, with your nature, and just like sit with that. And then, when it feels right to you, circle back to it and reflect on, how you feel then versus in that moment. Or let's say you're going through a tough time, because it's always fine and dandy when we're going through it. We're excited, we're motivated, we're doing fine. But then when we hit that, that hill, that wedge, you get frustrated. I encourage you to, pull out that notebook where you did the journaling and you found those, those thought forms, the visuals, all that information that, you felt was outside of yourself. And even though those outside forces stimulated you, it was always within you at the same time. You just needed to have a quiet space to meditate, to be in solitude, and to be, with one with yourself. Pull that out, reread what you wrote, and then reflect on like, hey, what has changed from then into now? And reflect on, okay, what is it that I feel like I'm making it bigger than what it was, because a lot of times when we stop and we pause and we breathe a little bit, drink some water, go for a walk, whatever, we realize the things that was frustrating us, because it's all about control, and we're all guilty of it. It's a consistent practice. We realize that it's not as, it's not as big and, grandiose as we thought it was originally. The more we observe it, we realize, dang, I was more so frustrated because I'm hungry, or the lack of money, or frustration because, misunderstanding someone is not understanding my words, or, my emotions, whatever the case may be. You just go down the line and see what can you do at that moment, what can you do later, and what can you reshape. Because some things, just takes a different, different turn. You might need to like reshape it, take a different route to the same destination. Don't be afraid to like pause and like reroute things and rewire things. So I'm gonna pull one more card and then wrap it up. Thank you for lasting this long with me. All right, what is the last card that should be sharing? I feel the bottom of the deck. What is that? Beauty salon. Yes, your hair, your makeup, relaxing spa, grooming, all this different. This is your prana. And also, maybe this is the week to invite the color pink into your energy. That pink aura, wear something pink, whether it's a headband or like paint your nails or something, just to generate, that energy, that prana. You'd be surprised what color can do. I am a big believer in color therapy. I mean, you can, if you're not, even if on a scientific level, look into it. Just like the power of water, how you speak to something, a negative versus positive, it crystallizes differently. I feel the same way. And if you're, have these, ESP, you're able to pick up aura, one person's aura is another person's magnetic field, color spectrum, however you want to cut and paste it. I do feel that color vibrates at a frequency. I do believe that it stimulates other people outside of you, and it's also a visual stimulation for yourself. I feel like it's another way of, managing, harnessing, and transmuting energy. Another topic I want to get into, color therapy. Whereas maybe you're not just doing it for yourself, where I feel like first you should, whether it's around the house, you want to go out or whatever, you want to wear a lot of pink, not just because you want to tap into feminine energy or you want to pull people towards you, but maybe you register that color with a little bit of softness. Maybe it registers to a type of flower or, cherry blossom, whatever the case may be, to stimulate. And, I say pink, but pick the color of your choosing. But to also on the other side of the spectrum, color therapy also with other people, so if you feel a certain way or, whether there's tension between you and another person and you feel like, hey, you know what, whether you feel that, there is friction and the way to protect yourself might be a little color therapy, then try wearing those colors and seeing how you feel and react around that person and but also more importantly, how you react and observe your energy, observe how you think, how you move, how you talk, don't be a robot now, but reflect, I encourage journaling also. So let me just throw that in there. So I know I keep saying one more, but literally I'm gonna just do one more and then just wrap it up. So for the ending card to share with you for the night, once again, thank you for lasting this long with me. For those who may have ADD, what is the last card of the night? Airport. Yes, travel, buddy. Departure. Depart out of those old energies. And not just depart out of those old energies. Depart out of other people's energies. Take that time for yourself. Transmutation, going into a different environment, exploring a different environment. It's not just physical, spiritual also, the spiritual realm. The more that you heal yourself, the more that, you go into your space, you'd be surprised, I feel like and I also believe the physical reflects the spiritual, which reflects, the mental and all the other things. The more that you take care of yourself, you beautify yourself, we're all on a frequency magnet, we're either going to attract or subtract. The first step is beautifying yourself on all spectrums, and then you're once you know how to love yourself in all forms, and take care of yourself in all forms, your temple, and then you start to reflect on the people around you, and even you'll start to open the eyes with the other people who you see that they're taking care of themselves too. And you realize you may not have realized that before, but you're like, oh shit, they were on this wave and I'm just now catching up. Or, oh wow, we can chill and groove together. And you might create something really beautiful. You might sit down and have a conversation and, feed off each other in a positive way. Get, exchange information, exchange notes, whatever the case may be. Maybe even create something that you both can, feel and appreciate in that moment, and be able to also part in your own ways without it being vampiric, So I just want you to look at all those spectrums and in the physical too. So that is your read. Thank you for staying. All right. As always, until next time, let the tides teach you. All right.